name is and today we are reviewing the new Reflections album, Willow. Reflections is a metalcore band from Minneapolis, Minnesota, and there isn't very much context I can provide for them other than that they are mostly an independent band and that this record was self-released, which is in and of itself something to respect, particularly since this album is very, very well mixed and produced, particularly for music that relies very heavily on drop F tuning. But, jumping into the album proper, I have to say that I was pretty disappointed right off the bat. Track 1, Synthetics, struck me as soon as I heard it as an odd opening for the album. It opens on some shrill noise, all good there, but then what follows feels like a few minutes of nothing but vocal callouts and breakdowns and vocal callouts and more breakdowns. And to give credit where credit is due, the vocals on this track are quite good. The vocalist gets down to some very solid low gutturals and some retching highs, but the song doesn't do very much in the way of tone setting or establishing any kind of affect that will draw you into the album and make you want to hear more. The song feels like extremity for extremity's sake, and not in a way that is self-aware or amusing. And then we get into track 2, From Nothing, which was one of the album's singles, and from a songwriting perspective is one of the best tracks on the record. And there are also a lot of little details in this song that go a long way. The vocals, particularly the mids that the vocalist is using, affect a lot of desperation. The guitar riffs in this song are very groovy, and there are some sweet picks thrown in for good measure that don't go unnoticed. But there is a big problem that presents itself on this song that is unfortunately pervasive throughout the entire record, which is the guitar tone. Now, typically, I have nothing against down-tuned or extended-range guitars. I play an extended-range guitar myself. But the guitar tone they've chosen is so liquid and so mushy that it makes the chugging sections and really all of the riffs in general much less heavy than they otherwise would have been. It affects everything. Additionally, there is a part of this song in which there's a fairly technical lead going on, but it just hits you as a wave of mushy noise because of the tone that they've selected for this extremely low guitar. Track 3 is titled Psychosis, and very early on, at this point in the record, I began to get frustrated because each member of the band is clearly very talented, is putting on an excellent performance. But the band is just making some songwriting and production choices that really hold the record back. For example, this song opens with a quick shot of low-end guitar before going into this slow, droning section that sounds a lot like a breakdown. And here's the thing about breakdowns, at least in my opinion. They are all about context. It's about contrast that makes them so heavy and that make you want to move so intensely when you hear them. And I'm aware saying this that since they have literally opened the song on this section, it by definition is not a breakdown. But without anything to contrast all of this slow, droning heaviness against, it really just comes off as boring. It's like putting meshuggah in a microwave. I do want to give some credit to track 4, Isolation, as it opens with this creepy ambient noise and some muffled drums, which really draw you in and invest your interest in the song in a way that the previous songs have not. Unfortunately, as soon as the song picks up, it completely loses me and suffers from all of the problems that I've just discussed. Additionally, I had almost no emotional reaction to track 5, Marionette, whatsoever. But in lieu of just dogging on that track, I do want to point out something positive about this song as well as the entire record, which is the quality of the drumming. The drummer is really keeping this whole project together. The vocalist is also very talented. The guitarists are clearly very technically capable and have a lot of songwriting ability. But the drummer is really what's driving us through this album. And the drumming parts, the fills he chooses, the rhythms that he chooses, are really some of the most interesting parts of any of these songs. And I really should have lumped track 6 in with track 5 before I gave that compliment, because unfortunately track 6, Dismal, is another track that really just doesn't make me feel anything at all, while simultaneously suffering from all of the problems that I discussed in relation to track 3. But all of that changes for a moment when we get to track 7, Samsara, which is both different tonally from the other songs on the record, as well as different in terms of its construction. The track opens with a low, clean guitar lick, some very powerful drums laid very loudly over top of it, and then we get some clean, almost monastic vocals that are a little uneven in their layering on top of one another. And all of this really draws you into the song and creates an entirely different tonal experience than all of the songs that have preceded it. We then get into some extremely powerful, emotionally affective screams, mostly mid-screams that are inclusive of the human voice. Those always get me. And there's also some AK-47 drumming that is really powerful and just makes you want to get further and further into this song. And when the heavier portion comes in, when the distortion is laid thick back onto the guitars, it works much better than it has previously on the record as a result of the contrast. Really, everything about this song is great, and it possesses a sense of progression that the other songs on the record simply do not, moving from what I've already discussed into an absolutely enraged bridge, and then finally closing on a fade out on a single bit of ambient ringing noise. And perhaps it's because track 7 was such an emotional high, but I also feel similarly positive toward track 8, Empathy. Despite the fact that this song shares a lot of connective tissue with the songs on this album that I do not enjoy, this particular track curbs those issues in a way that makes it palatable and enjoyable. For instance, the riffs are groovier and rely less on the guitar's low end to drive the song forward. Unfortunately, my optimism more or less imploded after that point, because tracks 9 through 12 are fairly joyless. And if you're wondering why I feel that way, it's for the same reasons cited previously. The guitar tone is way too washed out and mushy. Everything is incredibly repetitive. It really doesn't offer anything novel to metalcore. And it's just not interesting. So honestly, I feel kind of bad making this review. Not because I feel guilty about delivering a low score or anything like that, but simply because this is a clearly talented and skilled band that simply took their sound in a mistaken direction on this record, at least in my opinion. I'm giving this album a 4 out of 10. And with that, see ya.